द्रव्यरसगुणवीर्यविज्ञानीयम् अध्यायं व्याख्यास्यामः यथोवाच भगवान्. This chapter is about the discussion about rasa, guna, virya, vipaka, the pharmacological actions of the drugs. Now there is a discussion like which is prominent, which component of that is prominent, and then the conclusion about that. It's a very interesting issue. केचित् आचार्याः ब्रुवते द्रव्यं प्रधानं कस्मात् व्यवस्थितत्वात् इह खलु द्रव्यं व्यवस्थितं न रसादयः. Now, according to some, dravya is the most important. Dravya is yatrashuraha karma gunaha karanam samavayat dravyam, where the karma and the guna are located. That function and the properties are located in a base. That's dravya. Dravya is not simply translated as material. Dravya cannot be simply translated as material. You do not have any equivalent term in English for that dravya. Wherever there is a combination of karma and guna, function and the properties, that's dravya. And according to some scholars, dravya is the most important. Because dravya is something which can be seen and manipulated, changed, modified as it. Ekam dravyam vyavasthitam rasadayah yatha amiya phale ye rasadayah te pakvena santi. Like now, if you take a mango fruit, the mango fruit is having a amla rasa in the beginning, or maybe kashaya rasa still in the beginning, amla in the later stage, and then the madhura rasa in the later stages. And hence, the rasa can change, but the amra phala is the same, and hence that's more important. That's how one example is given. Then the other example is reason is nityatvacha. Nityam hi dravyam anityaha gunaha yatha kalkadi pravibhagaha. The classification of dravya, now in terms of the medicines, when it comes to the question of treatment, dravya is about the medicines, and the medicinal form could be of any form like either kalka or the tablets or kashaya, arista, etc. Now this is can be easily classified, and you can just transfer the same information can be transferred from one to the other. Whereas the properties, if you say lagu, guru, etc., that cannot be easily felt by others as well. Sayeva sampanna rasagandha vyapanna rasagandho va bhavati. A dravya can be again classified as a proper one where you have the properties rasagandha, etc., which are the pharmacological effects of the drug. They can be identified, and then you can classify as having a proper or improper. Whereas rasagandha, you cannot just do that kind of a classification. Then sojati avasthanacha, because when you say a class group of drug like the madhuraskanda, the dravyas are constant. The intensity of the taste in that can vary, and hence whenever you say identify a dravya, dravya is considered as the most important. यथा हि द्रव्यम पार्थिवं द्रव्यम अन्यभावं न गच्छति एवं शेषाणि. Like that's what I said. Like if you have classified a drug as a madhura skanda, it remains in the madhura skanda. The intensity of the madhura rasa in that drug can change. Then the other reason given is panchendriya grahanatya. Panchabhihi indrihi grishyate dravyam na rasadayah. When it comes to question of materials, the drugs can be assessed by all your sensations. Like it could be, you can see its appearance, you can see its color, you can feel the consistency, you can taste the smell, etc. And whereas each of the other properties like rasa, it can be taken only, or it can be assessed only by the rasanendriya, not the other way. Ashrayatvacha dravyam ashritaha rasadayah. All that rasa or guna, they are located in the dravya, and the dravya is ashraya, and hence dravya is more important. Arambha samatyacha dravyashritaha arambha yatha vidari mahritya samshuddhya vipratyeta ityeva madhacho narasadisho arambha. Now, whenever you start with the process of preparing a medicine, the medicine preparation starts with the dravya, the material, whatever the plant or the any specific herb like vidari gandharikara, not by the rasas. That's exactly the logic behind that. Then Shastra Pramanyacha. Shastra hi dravyam pradhanam pradeshe yoganam yatha matrunga agnimantav cha ityaho na rasadayaho pradishyante. according to the text also, in all the texts, Maturunga is, Maturungaji, Agnimanta, etc. The Dravyas are considered as the most important, and all the description is about the Dravyas, not really about the Rasas. Kramapekshitatvacha Rasadinam, Rasadaiva hi, Dravya Kramam Pekshante yatha, Tarune Tarunaha, Sampurne Sampurnaha iti. Even if you say that the rasa is important, but the intensity of the rasa would be depending upon the status of the dravya. As I said about the example of amra or the mango, in the initial stages the rasas are different, later stages the rasas are different, when it has ripened the rasa is different, and hence the dravya kramam apekshate, the rasa will be depending upon the status of the dravya. Ekadesha sadhyatvacha, dravyanam ekadeshanapi bharas sadhyate la Mahavriksha Tasma Dravyam Pradhanam Narasalayah. Another reason given by the pleaders who say that Dravya is important is any one component of the Dravya could be used like the Mula, Niryasa, Rasa, Kshira, etc. Whereas Rasa, you cannot just divide that. Tasma Dravyam Pradhanam Narasadeha Tasmat Niravevatvat. Dravya Lakshanam to Kriya Gunamata Samaya Karanam. The same Dravya is Kriya Gunamata Samaya Karanam. Na Ityahu. Now there was another difference of opinion. Some people would say the Dravya is not important. Rasastu Pradhanam. Rasa is important. Kasmat Agamat Agamohi Shastram Jade. According to the pleaders who plead that rasa is important, one of the reasons given by them is that because texts would describe the rasa as the adhikrita or official, and rasayataha ahara iti tasminstu pranaha upadeshacha. The rasa, the ahara or the food is based upon the rasa. Rasa pradhanam aharam, virya pradhanam aushadhi. The classification of the rasa and aushadhi is based upon the prominence of the properties. Rasa or the taste. Now, to translate rasa as a taste is not very proper translation, but you cannot have a better translation. That's all the point. So, rasa is represented by the taste as such, and whenever you assess a food, the food is selected based upon the rasa. And that means the pranaha, the life is depending upon the rasa, and hence rasa is important. This is one logic. Then Upadishyantehi rasaha yata madhuram lavanaha bhatum samayanti. Anuman, because the efficacy of the drug, like whether it is a Bhatashamaka or Pitashamaka, is based upon the rasas like madhuram lavanaha Bhatashamaka and so on. Then Anumanacha rasenahi anumyate dravyam. Now whenever you see a unidentified substance, one of the means of identifying that substance would be by tasting it. The taste itself is one of the parameters by which identification of the substance is possible. Hence, the rasa is considered to be more important. These are all the logics, different logics. Interesting. Then, Madhuramiti, Yatha Madhuramiti, Rishi Vachanatya, Rishi Vachanam Vedo, Yatha Kinchi Vidyartham Madhuram Ahrayata iti. According to the Veda description, wherever there is a need for specifying a substance, usually the people would prefer the taste of the substance as the prominent. Like whenever in the yaga process, if there is a need for addition of some of the habits, then the Rishivachanam, the Rishis would be Acharyas would be saying that you bring something which is having a specified taste like sweet or so on. Tasmata rasaha pradhanam raseshu samnya, and hence rasa is considered as important. This is one logic. These are all the different variety of argument. We will come to the conclusion later. Netyahuvanye. Now there was another difference of opinion, and the other difference of opinion is viryam pradhanamiti. Kasmat, virya is the functional entity of the drug, the real pharmacology effect of the drug. Kasmat tadvashena aushadha karma nishpattehe. Iha aushadha karmani ऊर्ध्व अधोभाग उभय भाग संशोधन संक्रमण संग्राहिक अग्नि दीपन पीडन लेखन ब्रह्मण रसायन वादीकरण श्वयथुकर विलयन दहन धारण नादन प्राणघ्न विषप्रशमनादि वीर्य प्रधानात् भवन्ति. Now the different activity of the drug, over the body, like whether it produces Vamana, Virechana, or any of those different activities, pharmacological activities. That activity is depending upon the virya, and hence the virya is important. The other reason given is Tatya Viryam Dvividam Ushnam Shitam Cha Agnisomyatvat Jagataha. According to majority of the people, Virya is considered as two varieties, Shita and Ushna. And because the whole world is depending upon these two properties, the Ushna and the Shita properties, is considered as a Virya is important. A more discussion about this issue, Ushna Shita, I will come to that at the end of this session. केचित् अष्टविधम् आहुः शीतम् उष्णं सिद्धं रुक्षं विषं पिच्छलं मृदुतीक्ष्णम् इति एतानि वीर्याणि स्वबलगुणोत्कर्षात् रसम् अभिभूय आत्मकर्म कुर्वन्ति. Now, according to some, there is a difference of opinion. Like the virya could be categorized into the 8 types of virya, and they are Shita, Ushna, Siddha, Ruksha, Vishada. Of course, popularly this is not accepted. Popularly in all the texts, Shita and Ushna virya are accepted. And whenever there is a pharmacological effect, final pharmacological effect is seen, the final pharmacological effect is reflected by either the Shita guna or the Ushna guna. यथा तावत् महत्पंचमूलम कषायम तिक्तानुरसम वातम शमयति उष्णबीजत्वात्. Now, given examples are the Brihad Panjamula, though it's Kashaya Tiktanurasa, which otherwise, as per the Rasaguna, Rasa properties, it should have been Vata Vardhaka, but it's Vata Shravaka because of the Ushnavirya Tata. Tata Pulathak Kashaya, Kadukat Kalanduhu, Sneha Bhavacha, Madhurasta Ikshurasho Vatam Vardhayati. Now, similarly, Kulatha is Kashaya Rasa, Palandu is Katu Rasa, but still they are Vata Shamaka because of the Sneha Guna. Madhura Ikshurasa, though it is sweet in taste, it aggravates Vata. Shita Virya because it is having Shita Virya. Katuka Pippali Pittam Shameti, though Pippali is Katurasa, it's Pitta Shamaka. Mrudu Shita Virya because of Mrudu Guna and Shita Virya. Amla Amalakam Lavanam Saindhavacha. Amalaka is Amla, Saindhava Lavana is Lavana Rasa. Tikka Kakamati Pittam Murtheti, but they are Pitta Shamaka. Similarly, Kakamati, though it's Tikka Rasa, it can aggravate the Pitta. Ushna Virya Madhura Matsya Ashta, Katukam Mulagam, Freshman Murtheti, Matsya, the is also Pitta Vardaka because though it's Madhura Rasa, it's Ushna Virya. Muraka, which though it's Katuka Rasa, it is Freshman Vardaka because of Snitha Virya. Amlam Kapittam Freshmanam Shameti, Kapitha, it is Amla Rasa, it reduces the Kappa. Ruksha Virya because of the Ruksha Virya as such. Madhura Muksham Ramja, Tadetat Nidarshana Muktam. So it's all the important is according to some Virya is important. Bhavanti Jatra, Yerasaha Vatashamanaha Bhavanti Yaditesh Vai, Roksha Lakho Shetyani Ate Hanyasamiram, Yerasaha Pitashmanaha, Bhavanti Yaditesh Vai, Paiksnya Ausnya Labutaha, Chivanate Tatkarma Karinaha, Yerasaha Shreshmanaha, Bhavanti Yaditesh Vai. Sneha Gaurava Shakyani, Nate Tatkarma Karinaha, Tasmat Viryam Pradhanamiti. Now, whatever we have discussed, the same is repeated in the form of a shloka. Like, though if the rasas may predict about Vata Shamana, then it may not be really Vata Shamana based upon the rasa. If at all it has a Ruksha, Lagu Guna or Shita Guna, then it may not affect the Vata, it may not reduce the Vata. Instead, they may even aggravate the Vata if these properties are there. Or similarly, Yerasa Pitashamana, like Madhura Rasa, if it is having a Tekshna Usna Guna, then it may not have the Pitashamana. And hence, whenever you study a Dravya, you have to study the Rasa and the Virya separately and then come to the conclusion, which is the final effect as such. Now, another logic is, according to some, it's not Virya alone which is important. The discussion is about the possibility of Vipaka Pradhanamiti, Netyahu Anye, Vipaka Pradhanamiti, Tasmat, Kasmat, Samyan Mithya Vipakapata, Yaha Sarvodravyani, Abhyavartani, Samyan Mithya Vipakwani, Gunam Dosum Mahajanayati. Now, the logic here is Vipaka is the method of digestion, how the drug is assimilated in the body. It's not simply digestion and assimilation. Based upon the assimilation properties, any material could be categorized into three vipakas: Madhura Vipaka, Amla Vipaka, Katu Vipaka. Madhura Vipaka means it has an anabolic. It enhances the anabolic activity, builds up the body, adds to the body. Katuka is a catabolic. It releases the energy. It's hot in the sense it releases the energy. So, from the contemporary science point of view, I translate this Vipaka as an anabolic, catabolic, and the amla, that third category, is the one which is having an effect on the chemical activity. It's a biochemically active substances. See, now in the contemporary science we have only two categories, anabolic and catabolic. But in between the anabolism and catabolism, there is another phase where the enzymes are acting, enzymes which are enhancing the chemical activity, and such is what the function of the amla vipaka. So whenever you consume a substance, the substance may have an impact on the body on either the anabolism, so anabolic substances like a nourishing substance taken in, it may enhance your body weight, then it's anabolic. It may produce more energy, release the energy, but it may not have an effect on the buildup of the body or gaining the weight. That's the Katu Vipaka. Or something which may enhance the digestive activity or anabolic, metabolic activity as a whole. It may not have a significant neither on the buildup of the body or nourishment or not the energy. The physiological activities are enhanced. That's the amla vipaka. Now, tatra ahuhane pratirasam paka iti. Kechi trividham ichanti madhuram amlam katukam jeti. Popularly, the vipaka are madhura amla kotaka, but according to some, in that period, some of the logic was about identifying the vipaka based upon each rasa. Now, that theory has become obsolete. Tattuna samyakam bhudagunata आमाच अन्यो अम्लो विपाको नास्ति पित्तं हि विदग्धम् अम्लताम् उपेति आज्ञेयत्वात् यद्येवं लवणोऽप्यन्यः पाको भविष्यति श्लेष्मा हि विदग्धो लवणताम् उपेति इति. Now Sushruta denies the theory of having 6 vipakas. It's only the 3 vipakas, because the reason given is the amla rasa can be produced due to the avipaka, impaired digestion, or a sort of specific mode of digestion, and that's what called as the vidagdha or lavanam pako bhavishati. So all that, whatever the rasas are there, rasas will be ending up only in the 3 categories, and hence madhurasya amlo amlasya evam sarvesham iti kechidaho drishantam joprishanti yada tavat kshiramukhaagatam patyamana madhumeva syat तथा शाली एवं मुद्गादय प्रकीर्णाः स्वभावं उत्तरकाले न परित्युजन्ति तद्वदिति केचित् वदन्ति अबलवन्तो बलवतां वशम् आयान्ति इति. Of course, this discussion has not much of a very solid background. Now, according to some people, the logic of identifying that 6 vipakas, they say that the kshira, the milk which is consumed, it will remain sweet as such. But the other way is, suppose if the milk is not digested properly, and you will have the amrasa, the sour taste presented, and hence the 3 vipakas are more important anyway. And this kind of a logic will have no base, and hence that logic is not important. This is what Susha says, evam anavastitihi, because if you go on like this logic, it will end up nowhere, and hence that cannot be accepted. We will have only 3 vipakas. Agamehi dvidha eva pako madhura katukashta tayoho madhurakyo guruho katukachyo laguhu iti. In according to some, again there will be 2 vipakas, madhura and katu vipaka. Madhurakya guruho, madhura is guru, katu is lagu. तत्र पृथ्वी तेजो वायु आकाशानां दैविध्यं भवति गुणसाधर्म्यात् गुरुता लघुता च पृथ्वी आपश्च गुरुव्यः शेषाणि लघूनि तस्मात् द्विविध एव पाकः इति. Then again the other way logic is identifying the vipaka as only 2, the guru and laghu. द्रव्येषु पच्यमानेषु येषु अम्बु पृथ्वी गुणाः निमत्तन्त अधिकाः तत्र पाको मधुर उच्यते. तेजो अनिल आकाश गुणाः पच्यमानेषु येषु ते निवर्तन्ते अधिकाः तत्र पाकः कटुः उच्यते. Now Sushruta ultimately pleads for the two vipakas than the three vipakas, and the reasons given are the logic final conclusion is Ambu Prithvi Gunaha, those material substances which have Prithvi Mahabhuta and Jala Mahabhuta, they end up in Madhura Vipaka and they will be anabolic, and Anila Akasha Gunaha, they will be Katu Vipaka, catabolic. Now, Prasakta Rishanamesham Vadinam Vadasangraha, Chaturnaam Samagrayat Ichan Chatru Vibhashtitaha. Now, this kind of logic, Sushruta says, these kinds of the logic is simply collected or presented to give you a total outlook about the discussion at the width of the knowledge at that period, and a broad-mindedness of these scholars at that period, like where every logic is accepted, discussed, and then they come to a conclusion. It's not that any theory is blindly followed, and hence these different theories are presented. Vada Sangraha is presented of different Vadinam is a very important statement of Sushruta, where the logics of everyone, every sort of logic is considered, viewed and analyzed, and then the final one is accepted based upon the practicality. तद्रव्यम् आत्मना किंचित् किंचित् वीर्येण सेवितं किंचित् रसविपाकाभ्यां दोषं हन्ति करोति वा. The final conclusion is it's not that any one logic is final. Every logic has its own base and every logic has its own value. Practically what happens is whenever you see a drug or whenever you administer a drug, some of the drugs would be producing its activity based predominantly based upon the dravya. Like you specify, like you take rice as a food. When it is taken, it gives a pleasant feeling. Wheat also is a food which gives a different sort of feeling. Now, certain of the people who are accustomed to the rice as the main salient food, if they take wheat, they may not have the same comfort. Whereas the people who are accustomed to the wheat, if they consume rice, they may not feel comfortable. So, in certain situations, Dravya is more important than the other, whereas Kinchit Viryena Sevitam. In certain situations, the Virya of the substance would be more important than the other, okay? Or Kinchit Rasavipakabhyam, taste or the Vipaka could be considered. Like when you prefer a sweet, the sweet taste is the important thing, whether it is Gulab Jamun or Rasagulla, you will have the sweet taste which is the preference, and hence this is how it is taken. Or when you have some cold, you prefer to have some substance which produces the hot, warm sensation in your oral cavity. It could be marica, it could be these lozenges, different sorts of the lozenges which are chewed, but you need that kind of a virya. So preference would be according to that situation, and at a specific condition, you may give more importance. Like when it's a question of preference of the food material, you may prefer rice or wheat based upon your preference. When it is a question of some party, you may prefer a sweet, and that sweet could be immaterial, whether it's rasgulla or the gulab jamun. Or when it is a need for something warm in the throat, you may prefer a lozenges or you may prefer maricha based upon that functionality. Hence, whenever we say a functionality of a substance, it depends upon the context, and hence each of them are important. That's how the conclusion that different discussions have to be compromised. Then Pako nasti vina viryat, Viryam nasti vina rasat, Raso nasti vina dravyat, Dravyam sheshthamam smritam. Ultimately, the final conclusion is the dravya is the most important. Without having that material in your hand, you cannot have any of the effects. Neither vipaka nor virya can exist without the dravya. जन्म तो द्रव्य रसयोः अन्योन्यापेक्षिकं स्मृतम् अन्योन्यापेक्षिकं जन्म यथा स्यात् देहदेहिनोः वीरसंज्ञा गुणा हि ये अष्टौ तेऽपि द्रव्याश्रयाः स्मृताः रसेषु न भवन्त्येते निर्गुणस्तु गुणाः स्मृताः द्रव्ये द्रव्याणि अस्माभिः विपच्यन्ते न षड्रसाः श्रेष्ठं द्रव्यमतो ज्ञेयं शेषाः भावाः तदाश्रयाः. Ultimately, the final conclusion is that dravya is the most important thing than the other, because all the rasa and the guna, they are dependent on the dravya, and they may be interrelated, and hence their interrelationship is the secondary effect. The most important is dravya. So whenever you prefer a substance for the treatment, you prefer the dravya than the reals. Now Sushil gives some more logic there. अमींस्यानि अचिन्त्यानि प्रसिद्धानि स्वभावतः आगमेन उपयोज्यानि भेषजानि विचक्षणीः प्रत्यक्षलक्षणफलाः प्रसिद्धाश्च स्वभावतः न औषधीः हेतुभिर्विद्वान् परीक्षेत कदाचन सहस्रेणाप्येतूनां नाम्बष्ठादिः विरेचयेत तस्मात् तिष्ठेतु मतिमान् आगमे न तु हेतुषु. Now whenever you finally decide what would be the pharmacological effect of a drug as such, it has to be based upon the Pratyaksha Lakshana Phalaha, practical trial. So clinical trial is the most important decisive factor to decide about the effect of a specific drug. It cannot be just discussed continuous or assessed completely. A total comprehension is not possible based upon only the logics. Now, then Sushil gives an example of Ambasthadigana. And Ambasthadigana, according to Sahasrena Hetunam, Ambastadihi Vireche. The Ambasthadigana cannot produce the Virechana by logic. This is what Sushil says in this context. Of course, when we discuss about the Ambasthadigana, I have referred to this issue also. Very interestingly, there is a bit of controversy. Ambasthadigana is classified as a Sangrahi. It's not a Virechana. Whereas in this context, Sushil says Ambasthadigana can produce the Virechana, and with any of the logic it cannot produce the Virechana. Logic cannot produce the Virechana. Practically it can, what Sushil says is practically it can produce the Virechana. Now the important is it's practically true. Ambastha, when it is administered, it produces the Virechana, but it has Kashaya Chitta Rasa, and otherwise in certain books it is classified as Sangrahi. Now that's the controversy point, and hence ultimately it's a Pratyaksha Lakshana Phalaha. The effect of the drug has to be assessed by a proper trial, and conclusion has to be done based upon the trial, or if you are not able to make the trial, the persons who have done the trial and then recorded in the form of the text, Agama, or Agama is the text. So whatever is mentioned in the text, that has to be accepted. Agamena upayojyani bheshjani vichakshanihi. रसैः रसौ तुल्यफलः तत्र द्रव्यं शुभाशुभं किञ्चित् रसेन कुरुते कर्मपाकेन चापरं गुणान्तरेण वीर्येण प्रभावेणैव किञ्चन. Now the same, whatever we have discussed earlier, the same is again repeated. Is either rasa which is important in some situations, paka which is important, guna is important, or virya is important. In specific situation, contextually, you may prefer a substance based upon any of these properties. यद्यद् द्रव्यरसादीनां बलवत्वेन वर्तते अभिभूय वितरांस्तत्र तत्कारणत्वं प्रपद्यते विरुद्धगुणसंयोगे भूयसा अल्पं हि जीयते. Now, whenever you select the drug, or the final activity is to be assessed of a drug, it depends upon the prominence of each. When the rasa is the prominent, then the rasa would be more effective. When the virya is more prominent, the virya would be more effective. You can modify these effects based upon the samskaras or maybe combinations. Like, to give an example, jeeraka, raw jeeraka, it will be having very pungent taste. Rasa is very severe, and that raw jeeraka cannot be used in the food. When you prepare the food, raw jeeraka cannot be used in the food because it has very pungent taste. So the jeeraka which you use in the kitchen, it will be processed, it will be boiled, dried, and then certain component of that would be extracted out. Whereas the same jeeraka can be used for the medicines. When you use that jeeraka paste or jeeraka churna, you may prefer a raw jeeraka because that the virya would be very prominent. So you may modify that virya or the rasa by certain processes or by combination, combining the drugs. One example is about the jeeraka. Or we may give many other examples. Shunti, ardraka, the raw shunti and the dried shunti, their properties will be different. The ardra shunti will be having madhura vipaka, whereas the dried shunti would be having katu vipaka, and hence the effect would be different. So these kinds of difference could be seen by the modification, and you can modify the drug in such a way that any one component becomes more prominent. रसं विभागतो वीर्यो प्रभावस्थान्यपोहति बलसाम्य रसादीनाम् इति नैसर्गिकं बलम्. Ultimately, in majority of the situations, in the routine conditions, rasa is relatively in the initial stage, when the taste which you appreciate is the relatively less important. The final important is next is vipaka, which is the most determinant, or the next virya is the next determinant, and the most important prabhava. Prabhava is something which cannot be predicted. Now, the drugs are classified into two categories: Samapratyayarabdha and Vichitra Pratyayarabdha. Samapratyayarabdha, where the final effect can be predicted based upon the sequence of these rasa, vipaka, virya, and it is predictable. When the final effect is not predictable, then it's considered as a Vichitra Pratyayarabdha, and that Vichitra Pratyayarabdha is the Prabhava. Now, even in the other text, like in Vagbhata, again the same logic is presented, but only the issue is same, it's a repetition, but the logic given, the reasons given are somewhat more modified, more sophisticated, and in Charaka also it's the similar issues are discussed, and I have just referred to that just simply casually. In Vagbhata, the conclusion is Dravyamem Rasagiram Sheshtam Tehi Tadashrayah Panchabhutatmakam Tattukshmam Adhishtaya Jayate Am Yogni Pavana Nabhasam Samavayatah Tannivrattihi Visheshascha Vyapadeshastu Bhuyasa. Now, the Dravya is the most important according to Vagbhata, and the classification of the Dravya is based upon the Panchabhutika constitution, like either Prithvi Mahabhuta or Apna Mahabhuta is dominance is assessed, and based upon that the drug is classified. Now, in Charaka, the same issue is discussed. Nati kevalam guna prabhava deva dravyani karmakani bhavanti dravyahani dravya prabhavat guna prabhavat dravya guna prabhavatcha tasmin kale tattad adhikaranam asadya tam yuktim artam cha tam abhipretya yat kurvanti tat karma yena kurvanti tat viryam yatra kurvanti tad adhikaranam yada kurvanti sakalaha yatha kurvanti sa upayah yat sadhayanti tat phalam. Now, Charaka gives that final view where the context is the important. It depends upon the context. You may use the rasa, virya, or the prabhava for the benefit as such. Now, the ultimate question is whether the contemporary pharmacology would have this kind of a view or not. Practically, if you look at the gross pharmacology doesn't consider the pharmacological effect of the drug based upon any of these properties like rasa. The taste of a drug is not really considered as a pharmacological component as such in the contemporary science, and the contemporary science doesn't view the idea of the rasaguna virya vipakas as the pharmacological activities. It's absolutely a new, rather a different concept. But if you look at the trends of the research, then you will have some more important clues. So I am just suggesting about that part. Now I highlight and I just try to go into that component simply to make the Ayurvedic scholars. Now what happens is some of the Ayurvedic scholars may have a feeling that this Rasaguna Siddhanta would have no value because pharmacology doesn't accept. Now don't have that kind of any vision. The basis of the Rasa, Guna, Virya would be the basis of the future. Now, if you look at the very basic physiology of the taste perception, and based upon the contemporary physiology, the taste perception is a genetic property, and the genes present in the cells would decide that, and the finally the categories of the taste identified are 5, and they are basic taste, which we call as the basic taste are 5, and they are salty, sour, sweet, and bitter. And as per the current knowledge of the physiology, the perception of these tastes is dependent upon the individual taste buds located in the tongue, practically the locations of these specific taste buds in the tongue area. Now, umami is one of the tastes which is identified as a basic taste, and that umami is a taste which enhances the taste perception, as in case of the gluconate. Now, your taste makers, Ajinomoto, It's having umami taste in the sense it enhances the appetite, it makes you feel better. It's not a basic taste as such. So, and the major area of the tongue would have that umami perceptive receptors, and that's why once you start with that taste makers, you will be becoming addicted to that taste makers as such. So these are certain things, and the preference of the food is based upon multiple factors like heredity, sex, age, and the total other way like safety, tolerance, even the cost, economy, society, culture. These are all the factors. But now these are all the established things. Now, if you look at the new trends in the taste or new trends in the research, there is one new perception that taste perception is dependent upon the genetics. Now, I am just giving you a few of the recent research publications which are of a high category research categories where the relationship of the genes and the taste perception are discussed, and relationship of this taste perception and the diseases also are being viewed. Now, there is another important breakthrough about the perception of and something like why I say Ayurveda is for the future. Now, if you see the Nobel Prize award given for the medicine in 2021, the prize winners were Julius Ardem and Patapodian from the US. They got a jointly the medicine physiology for their work on sensing touch and temperature. Now, to be brief, what David Julius had presented, the Nobel Award was given, is a capsaicin, an alkaloid of chili peppers, which is having that taste, that specific taste, is perceived, that specific taste is perceived by the heat sensing sensory nerve endings, or rather, it's Ushna, that taste of chili and Ushna Guna, or the heat perception, they follow the same channel. So ultimately, the conclusion is there is a perception of the taste of a substance to the guna or the virya, ushna or the shita. And my granny, I usually joke like, my granny has told me quite early, like the chilies are hot, and everyone uses the word chilies are hot. She didn't get any Nobel Award, but David Julius got the Nobel Award. I envy on that part. Now, similarly, the other way is the channels. Now, metabolicians research also is earlier the feeling was different, or the perception of physiology was different, like the perception of the taste and perception of the sensory sensations. They are two different nerve endings. But now, what the new research has given is the mechanosensitive cells, the cells which perceive the touch sensation and the pressure sensation, they also can take up the sensation of the heat or the cold, or the same related to the taste. Now, linked with the capsaicin research, the taste perception also can be perceived through, and hence maybe they are considered as breakthrough researchers which can be giving you a different direction to the development of the physiology in future. Now, what I perceive this as the gateways or gate walls where the theories, contemporary theories, are now trying to come to the background of what we have in Ayurveda. So, from Ayurvedic point of view, we need to preserve, we need to plead for our theories, continue to stick on to our theories of Rasaguna Virya Vipaka, so that in future, maybe this would be universally accepted. With this, let me conclude. It is Sushil Samhitam Sutasthane Dravya Gunarasa Virya Vipaka Vijnaniya Nama Chatvarinchattamo Adhyayaha. With, and maybe in future, in coming discussions again, we may have some more discussions about these issues of pharmacology and the Ayurvedic perception. With this, let me conclude today. If there are any questions, no questions, like, okay, fine. So we'll conclude today. Thank you.